My name's Erin Brodwin. I'm a reporter with Business Insider. I write about clean meat, technology, and health, and I'm here to moderate a star-studded panel on clean meat. So I think the best way for us to get started would be if I start out by asking each of you to sort of introduce yourselves, tell us who you are, tell us perhaps how you're distinct in terms of the clean meat landscape, maybe what region of the world you represent, and what your focus is in terms of species, because sometimes we're talking about fish, sometimes we're talking about meat, and product type, and possibly your production method or strategy. So let's start here. Yep.
Hello, I'm Nia. Can everybody hear me there in the back? Okay, excellent. I'm Nia Gupta. I'm the CEO of Fork and Goode. We're a clean meat company based in New York. We're starting our production in clean pork. And I suppose we're the only company with issued IP that we've developed in-house in the landscape. And what really differentiates us, I believe, is our technology. So we have a novel approach to cell biology, which I believe will help to scale some of the issues with cost constraints. So I think with our new approach that we can actually get to parity, if not cheaper, than meat. I can't say too much more than that.
Great.
Awesome. Hi, I'm Valeti. I'm the co-founder CEO of Memphis Meats. Memphis Meats is the first company in the space that was founded late 2015. I did that with Nick Genovese, my co-founder. And I think one of the fundamental principles from the day we started was we're not going to be in the stealth mode. We're going to start talking about our products, start putting the products out there as soon as we start developing them. And I think that started off in January 2016 when we put the first clean meat meatball out in the public domain. We started calling the field clean meat. And we subsequently did the first introduction of poultry in March 2017. So we did chicken and duck. So one of the things we're trying to do is to show that the platform of growing cell-based meats, as we started to use in our nomenclature more lately, is a very unique, strong, diverse platform where you can think of any species, any animal that's used in the food production, and start bringing it into the frame of reference. So it's very relatable to what people eat. So we prioritized bringing it to the forefront for many discussions that need to happen in the scientific community, in the business community, as well as in the regulatory community. And finally, to the stakeholders, including the industry incumbents. And we'll talk a little bit later about our shift in using the nomenclature to cell-based, and I think that's an important discussion to have. With that, I'll pass it on to Josh.
Thanks, Uma. We founded Just about 6.5 years ago. The whole purpose of Just is to try to figure out a way to feed all of us better. Just really comes from the perspective of not just how to feed people better here in Berkeley or San Francisco or Manhattan, but how to feed people better in Birmingham, in Liberia. And more people are eating meat today than yesterday, and more people, unfortunately, will eat meat tomorrow than today. So the way we think about things is you have to culturally recognize that meat is a part of our lives. Human beings have been eating meat for 2.1 million years. And that's an important part of how we think about it. We think it's going to be critical ultimately to get the price of meat below the cost of conventional meat. And the other thing that makes us a little bit different is we're a food company. So we sell lots of food today. You can find our products in over 4,000 Walmarts. You can find us in 3,300 public schools. You can find us in Rainbow Grocery and even Piggly Wiggly in Alabama. So it's really necessary to bring together all of that, I think, ultimately to solve the problem. And I'm really happy to be here with everyone.
Hey, good morning, everyone. Hear me okay? My name is Cooperhouse. I'm president, CEO, and co-founder of a company called BlueNalu. We put together a team with expertise in cell biology, tissue culture, biomedical engineering, food innovation, and experience in startups and exits. And our focus is, as we describe it, cellular aquaculture, clean seafood, really providing a solution that's really critically needed. As I think we're all aware, consumers have shifted towards more healthy eating, and there's a global demand for seafood that's at the highest usage of all time, with over 20 kilograms per capita globally, but clearly a global diminishing supply. There's an absolute need to feed the planet with a source of protein that may not be available, will not be available in the decades ahead. So clearly a need for a company like ours, and we're really excited to work with our peers and pioneer this exciting new technology.
Great, thanks all of you, I appreciate that. So since we're at day 2 of the conference, and I assume all of you in the audience are experts at this point, I think we can dive deep. So I'd like to first ask what kinds of technical challenges and successes that you've encountered so far. We can start with you.
Yeah. I'd like to build on something that really came up in the last panel, which was, so Fork and Good, half of our team came out of Modern Meadow. And Modern Meadow, 5 years ago, after developing some of the first prototypes in clean meat and creating chips made out of bovine cells, so steak chips, in 2011, actually ran into the technical challenges of trying to use the science and trying to get to a cost that made any sort of sense for a normal person to buy.
Right.
And I think the issues we faced then was purely trying to use even interdisciplinary sciences to solve a problem. And the problem really had to be addressed bringing in engineers and bringing in people in food business as well. And once we did that, and so we tapped on tissue engineering expertise from the likes of Dr. Forgaj, but also Dr. Atala from the Wake Forest Institute of Regenerative Medicine, but also pulling from bioprocessing, bioengineering, and figuring out what kinds of commodity prices we need to get to for food companies. So Fork and Good's goal is less to be, I think, a food company and more an ingredient company. And it was that approach that led us to the path that we're on now and starting a new company.
Great. There definitely is a lot of overlap here between medicine and food.
Yes.
Yeah, I think the main technical challenge for the field is producing meat at scale and at a cost that makes sense. And the second one, I think, is a challenge for the field. Not a technical challenge, is really relating to the customers or the people that eat meat on a daily basis. We've always said at Memphis Meats, our mission is meat, not plants, and we want to be sure that we are talking about the people that are ultimately going to be eating meat. And on the technical side, if you think about the progress in this field, there are many reasons why it's going to be difficult to achieve cost parity or beat costs, and also many reasons why it's going to be challenging to scale. But these reasons did not stop us from founding the company 2.5 years ago, because at that point the costs were probably in the order of $1 million a pound, right? And when we start thinking about it just 2 years hence or since, it's 1,000-fold lower than that. And we continue to see dramatic reduction in costs for all the species we've been working on. And to the point there, we stopped calculating month-to-month costs. We're just looking and saying we see a trajectory of this getting to the market in the near future. And we start thinking about us being in the striking distance, and there's things that have to fall into place for us to be able to build up the supply chain and being able to identify partners that can work with us reliably, and then also be able to communicate this to the customers. So we are this unique place in this industry where we are building in an industry that has lots of parallels that you can draw on. For instance, the lowering the cost of feed is the biggest challenge in this field. And right now that's a problem because no one's producing those ingredients at scale. But as you start figuring out the key ingredients that our animal cells need to grow, I have very little doubt in mind that those things can be scaled up. So I'm thinking about cost and scale being inevitable. The time frame in which we can get there is really the question. And I think for all the companies in this space, in 2015 there was one company, Memphis Meats, saying purely this is it. By the end of 2015, there was a second company that joined. Now there's 25.
Okay.
But that's just barely scratching the surface. There'll be thousands of companies in this field. I'm hoping in 2 years from now when we have this conference. And there will be synergies from these companies. And I think it's impossible to sit here and predict that we're not going to hit cost points nor scale points. So to me, that is a given. I think the part that's really important for all of us to work on is how do we start having people have the conversations about what this is? Because we believe there's no need for a prefix. There's no need for it to be cell-based or clean. It is meat. It's meat, plain and simple, right? But we need to be able to let people experience it. And I think that's fundamentally one of the biggest challenges for the field. The minute consumers start experiencing this meat, they'll understand that our beef is beef, our chicken is chicken, our duck is duck, our fish is fish. That's one of the biggest hurdles. Just putting products out there, having people come and see it from all parts of the world is going to be critical.
And Uma, I know you're working on several different species, duck, you mentioned, beef, pork. Is there one in particular that's emerging as potentially cheaper than the others, or maybe a headliner here?
Look, the costs are still not, I wouldn't call any of them cheap, right?
You don't want to spend thousands of dollars.
So if it's a few $100s for one, the other one is a few $100s more.
Okay.
They're still relatively in the expensive realm. So I think it's too premature to say which one is going to be the first one to get there. I do think, fundamentally we're focusing on platform technology. We do want to show a variety of products that people can come and experience.
Great. Thanks.
I think the biggest technical challenge is getting out of the lab and into larger manufacturing environments. Hopefully most people had our Just Egg breakfast burrito yesterday. We've been tasting Just Egg in the lab for the last 3.5 years. The lab is not the market. The lab is not the shelves of Walmart. The lab is not the university. The lab is not on the streets of Mumbai. Right? That's the hard thing, getting it out of the lab in a way that it's safe, in a way that is consistent, in a way that is robust, in a way that is affordable. I think far and away that's the most significant technical challenge. I agree with Uma. I think the other big challenge is that cultural challenge. The reason we decided to approach meat in this way, as opposed to just using our plant-based platform to do plant-based meat, is cultural. I couldn't imagine a world in which people would systematically shift from plant-based meat, from conventional meat to plant-based meat. I just couldn't see it. Now, I can imagine a world in which people eat plant-based meat. I can imagine a world in which McDonald's puts a veggie burger on their menu. But I couldn't imagine a world in which it only has a veggie burger on its menu. And I think to solve the really urgent challenge we have in and around intensive animal agriculture, it can't be added to a menu. It has to be the only thing on the menu. And culturally figuring out a way to unlock that is really important. And I think central to that is it has to be called meat. It can't be called something that is not familiar to a mom living in Birmingham.
Just to add on to the last comments, there are in fact so many hurdles in the development of this product. There's kind of 4 stages, if you will, of the evolution of a product. At the concept stage, at the prototype stage, we talked about some media composition, reducing costs. Then obviously there's the commercialization stage and all the bioengineering that's required to really create a commercial viable product. Then there's product development, to actually create a product that is in fact recognizable by consumers with all the sensory attributes and nutritional attributes that consumers expect. So it does in fact replicate what we expect a scallop or sea bass or whatever it might be to be like, and really truly represent that. And of course, marketing, sales, distribution is another challenge, to really find the right strategic partners to take this to market, and to have consumer communication about what exactly this huge benefit is. There are so many benefits. In fact, it's confounding how many benefits there are, about how best to articulate what those benefits are to consumers, which would in fact differ whether this be marketed in Asia, US, or EU. So there are in fact many challenges from both technical engineering and marketing that we will overcome.
Great, thanks. And Uma, since you brought up the topic of cost, we've been getting predictions for clean meat wrong for a long time. I think part of that is the media to blame. Sorry about that. Trying to wake you all up in case anyone was getting sleepy. Is my mic still on? Okay.
Yes, it is.
We've been getting predictions about clean meat wrong for a very long time. We've said it's coming, then we've said it's coming in 6 months, then a year, then a couple years, then 5 years, sometimes 10 years. Why do you all think that we've been getting predictions on clean meat wrong for so long? And what is the real timeline? When am I actually going to be eating a clean burger or fish patty that I'm not paying hundreds of thousands of dollars for? Start with you again.
Start with me again. So I think there's the answer for outside of the industries and then also insiders. And frankly, no one wants to read a headline of exciting new technology to directly grow animal proteins and fats from cells that may or may not be on your plate 3 to 5 years from now.
Fair.
You know? Nobody wants to read that. and I don't think all the intentions are necessarily negative. I think there's so much excitement about this industry. There's so much enthusiasm. People want this to be there already and be there yesterday. And sometimes that enthusiasm is around just willing the industry into existence. But these are, I don't think there's any doubt, complex biological processes when we're talking about clean meat. And they do go stepwise. There are all these layers of problems to solve in the biology, the bioreactors, the engineering, the food science part of it. And it takes time. And I think in terms of the insiders, the true scope of the problem has only been understood now, right? So initially it was, can we do this? I mean, I think Mark was saying with his burger and what we did with the steak chips was, is this even possible? Will this taste good? Will this be like meat? And that's not the question anymore. Now the question is, can we actually sell this in the market at large? And that's a very different question to answer.
I can certainly talk from my experience here. The idea first came to me in 2005. I sat on the sidelines for 10 years, not doing anything about it, asking other people to do it. I was on the board of New Harvest trying to get lots of people interested in doing it. And the conversations that I've had with my friends, my colleagues in cardiology, as well as my family, and all of them kept leading to one thing. Why are you on the sidelines? Why are you not doing it yourself? I think all the people that made predictions of this going to be available in the near future were making them from the sidelines. So I think being in the arena is number one, the most important thing that's happened. So starting in late 2015, people started jumping into the arena. And that's when it started really making very clear that the cost will come down, and the opposite will be true, where people have been saying it will be on the market 10 years from now, 20 years from now. We think it's going to be way earlier than that, like in the very near future. If you want to come and eat clean meat or clean fish, clean burger, cell-based meat, you don't have to wait. You can come today and have it at Memphis Meats.
Oh, great. Let's do that.
Yeah. So therefore, that question is answered. But in terms of getting to cost, I realistically think that there is a market right now. People write to us all the time saying, we will buy it now for the price that you're going to charge us. But that's not the point. I think the point is when we can start getting this in the market at a price that's premium enough that maybe thousands of people in an area can be supplied on a regular basis, and being able to scale to that, getting out of the lab and doing that is fundamentally important. And I think many companies in this space will be getting there very quickly. The last point I'd make is for scale to happen, we have to partner with people that have been doing related production techniques. And Liz in Meat 101, she clearly made a point that there are existing bioreactors. By the way, we call them cultivators because we're cultivating meat. We're talking about food. This is a food industry, and bioreactor is not a name in the food industry. So we've adopted the word cultivator because we're cultivating food. So these cultivators are available readily where you can deploy from commercial off-the-shelf applications. And there's parts of it that we'll have to develop to get the complexity of the tissue we need. And that's the only technical part that needs to be done on the engineering side. So all of these are very doable in the near future.
It also depends what kind of meat you're talking about. So steak, 5 years maybe. Bluefin tuna, see, give a little bit off. Ground beef, chicken nugget, sausage, it's different.
Right.
Also depends on the percentage of clean meat that you're talking about.
And when you're talking about different, Josh, sorry to interrupt, do you mean in terms of the texture? Getting the texture of a nugget, because it's just kind of a meal that's getting squished into a container. That's a lot easier than getting a steak, which requires marbling and all sorts of...
Yeah, I mean, if you just think about the last chicken nugget you've had, or the last steak that you've had, or you've watched someone eat, for the vegans in the audience, all meat is not the same meat. Some meat is infinitely more complex than other meat. I think that's one thing sometimes it's missed. The meat market is a $4 trillion market filled with lots of different products, lots of different categories, and there's a spectrum of complexity. The second thing I think that is often missed is if you go to Walmart tonight and you buy a bag of Tyson chicken, emphasis on the word chicken nuggets, about 60% of that nugget is chicken. You got soy, you got starch, you got all sorts of breading in it too. There's a lot of opportunities for these meats not just to be purely meat, but to be combined with other things in the same way that the meat that is sold today is the case. The third point is, it depends what you mean when you say, is it coming, right? Now, coming to 4,000 Walmarts, for us, is not going to be by the end of the year, unfortunately, as much as I might want that. Coming to 3,000 public schools is not coming by the end of the year, as much as I might want that. But being in a handful of restaurants, learning, scaling, putting out a safe, robust product for a small number of people, as we learn how to get the economics right, as we learn how to get the taste right, well, that's a little bit sooner.
Right, and last time we talked, I think you said you aim to have a product in restaurants by the end of this year?
So if you would be open probably to traveling outside the United States to the likely country where we're going to get this out in, you could sit down in a restaurant and order it. But for us, we're going to be starting out with chicken. We're also working on a number of different species. But that's the first one we're going to be starting with.
Nice, getting all these invites. I should be moderating more conferences. Right.
You probably want to come to Berkeley before you go outside the country.
That makes sense.
It's important that she pays for it, though.
True. All right, you're up next.
Yeah, thanks, Erin. I think just to pick up on Josh's point, I think it's the seafood industry is similar to the meat industry in the context that just as the industry began with meatballs and hamburgers, and it will work its way towards the ribeye, the seafood industry has similar parallels. The foods that we all consume are either an ingredient or a product, if you kind of think about it in that context. And some items like a meatball or a hamburger, for example, are mixed with other ingredients and become carriers of components, which makes them more palatable, and they're really perfect for the early adopters to try it in some formulation. The same thing on the seafood side. Does it make sense to go after bluefin tuna, which has such amazing sensory attributes that need to be right in front and center, or conceptually like a canned tuna? So just within one species, there's various ways to enter the market. A canned tuna, for example, is a $15 billion segment that many of us might find more attractive to incorporate and personalize ourselves by adding our own plant-based mayonnaise to really make a really outstanding product.
That'd be fun.
Yeah, let's work on it. So it's really looking at the evolution of sensory attributes that the consumer will most likely adopt, beginning with some of the early entrants that make a lot of sense, and working our way up to the center of the plate items that will be where we as consumers are much more demanding for those attributes.
Great, thanks. And then another question for all of you. How do you think, this is stepping back a little bit, but if you were to look at the industry as a whole, this clean meat industry, how do you think it'll mature in the coming years? Will we start to see more specialization, more companies launched around specific enabling technologies for the industry, or perhaps collaborative efforts? This is one that I'm really interested in, collaborative efforts around patent pledges or maybe like IP pooling frameworks. We'll start with this end. Change it up a little.
Yeah, I think in terms of partnering, that's really critical for all of our success. I think what's really wonderful is that this industry, thanks to GFI, has really come together as an aggregation of like-minded companies looking to make a dramatic disruptive change to our planet. But in terms of partnerships, that's really key. So that really can happen at every level. At the R&D stage, if you will, when we're all developing media, looking for solutions to reduce our costs. Certainly next at the engineering stage, we're looking to partner with industry on equipment that Uma mentioned is in fact in many cases available in the market but may need some customization. On the product development phase, we're developing those prototypes for consumers, and certainly very critically in the commercialization stage. I think what's been said here is, fortunately, proof of concept has been demonstrated to the public, but now we're about proof of scale. How can we actually create, what is this factory of the future? It is a food factory. It has a lot of the similarities to any other food factory, following some of the same principles, with some of the same equipment. But what does it look like? What are the inputs, what are the outputs? And how do we actually make that affordable to support a regional population that could be 20, 30 million. So that's really, it's all about collaboration at every step of the way here. And lastly, on the marketing side, just really working on communication strategy as well as regulatory policy to really make sure that each country that we go to, that we are joined at the hip and really fighting our battle together and following some of the same principles. We all need to make sure that our products are done in a safe manner that meets the needs of consumers and ideally are labeled the way we like them to be labeled.
Thanks, Lou.
If you look at any technology, it requires integration. The iPhones in your pocket require integration. An electric car requires integration. And you're going to need to have lots of different companies that specialize in different elements of that technology. And, Apple doesn't make the glass screen on your iPhone. Another company does. Apple doesn't make all the processing chips in your iPhone. Another company does. It'll be the same thing. I see media companies popping up. I think that's exciting. I think in the future you'll have 3D printing companies that come popping up. I think that's exciting. I think you'll have lots of efficiencies in manufacturing that'll pop up. I think that's exciting. I think you're not going to have one company that is able to integrate everything simply because there's no company, not Google, not Apple, not Tesla. There's no company that figures a way to invent every element of the technology. There's an ecosystem that builds around it. I think for the folks in the audience that are thinking about starting their own company, don't just look at what the folks up here on the stage are doing. Think about how you can provide something to the ecosystem that could be even more valuable than what we're doing up here.
Right. So, for example, I'd imagine that if a company were to start trying to create steak, there might be another startup that would emerge that would try to, and I believe this may already exist, a company that's trying to produce the fat that would fit into the marbled steak once it's produced.
Yeah, and I think it could be something like that. I think it could be whether it's media, whether it's an ingredient, whether it's different elements of manufacturing. There are all sorts of different, I think, ways to enable how this is happening, and I think that'll be required to make it real. And real to me, again, is not just on the menu. Real to me is when it's the only thing on the menu.
I think the point about partnerships, I think, is critical, and it's already started happening in the industry. For instance, like I said, people jumping from the sidelines into the arena. In our own company, they are partnering with each other. They come from such different disciplines, but they have to figure out a way to partner. So that's number one. I think it's also evident on this stage that from the time we started Memphis Mates, we started talking to other people in the ecosystem to start their own companies. I spoke to Nia about a year and a half ago and said, this is an area you should be in. And Nia was from Singapore, and she's like, yes, I'm very interested, and now she's got a company. I spoke to Josh in 2015, 2016. Just is now into producing cell-based meat. I spoke to Lou when Lou, Chris, and Chris were here and saying, this is a place we need to collaborate. So I think partnerships among the industry is number one. I can say of the 25 companies that are now in this space, I probably talked to almost all of the founders to say this is an ecosystem. We're not competing with each other. We're actually creating this ecosystem. So I think that's number one for partnerships. Number two, we do have to bring in a diverse group of investors into this field. They see interests that align with whether it's a mission for animal welfare or environment or health or purely economic reasons. They all have to be at the table. So those partnerships have also been started. Our Series A is a very good example of that, of getting people that care about impact, finances, as well as the incumbent industry. And thirdly, you need to start making partnerships with agencies. The food is a regulated industry. You got to start making partnerships with the regulator of food in your country. And that's an important partnership to have. And lastly, you've got to work with the industry incumbents. Food's not our own territory. It's been around for 10,000 plus years. It's been continuously innovated. The farmers and ranchers and people in the food and agriculture community have always met the demands of what the consumer was asking for. The reason the meat demand is going up incredibly is not because the producers are pushing it into the market. It's because everybody is asking for it. And in order to work this in a way that the industry can flourish, we've got to figure out a way to move out of our comfort zone and starting to talk to the stakeholders that are the incumbents. These are not easy conversations to have, but if we can make them see the value of what this innovation could mean to food production, I think we can short-circuit a lot of unnecessary distractions or battles or fights. So I think these are all critical partnerships that need to happen, along with the other partnerships of, look, one company is not going to make everything. There'll be lots of companies that will be providing components, and building up those supply chains is going to be critical. So that's how we look at it.
Thanks. Yeah.
I think I would answer this question with sort of my lens, which is having spent more than a decade in more traditional agriculture and traditional supply chains. And I really see this industry as being a parallel supply chain, or maybe integrated into the food system, which I like that people are starting to talk about the food ecosystem and the system. That's what we're part of. We're not a separate entity. And just like any meat supply chain, which has artificial insemination and breeders and feedstocks and pastures and feedlots, this industry will also have every different specialized piece of the industry. That being said, it's challenging to do now because we don't really have standards, and we're not sure what is the universal methodology that each of us is adopting. So I can imagine being an entrepreneur, it would be challenging to see what to provide and where to start. So come and have the conversation. Like, I think as everyone's mentioned here, the industry itself is extremely collaborative. So everybody is pretty open and willing to talk. I think where, other than the players that Uma has mentioned, I would put into that mix also public sector and academic institutions. So I think there could be a lot more collaboration there, particularly in public research or longer term research, which doesn't belong in so much in the private realm.
Great. Call to all the scientists out there.
Yeah.
Thanks.
I will say too, competition is a nice thing also.
Yeah.
So I mean, we should collaborate, of course, but you know, industries are built often on competition too. Right? That's not I think there needs to be equal parts competition, maybe equal parts collaboration. We really want to increase the chances it happens in our lifetime.
Cool. Thanks. And Josh, since you mentioned not being satisfied until clean meat was not only an item on the menu, but the only item on the menu, I've been dying to ask all of you this. At one point, if ever, do you think clean meat or cultured meat, whatever we're calling it these days, will surpass regular meat in terms of either popularity or sales?
Yeah.
So perhaps we'll start with you, and then Lou, and then we'll come over this way.
I think two big things need to happen. I think one, it needs to get below the cost of conventional meat, so that has to happen. And the second, I think it has to be better than conventional meat. So an example would be, I'll use a seafood example because I'm sitting right here. So if my dad goes into Walmart and he can buy cod for $2.99 a pound, cheap cod for $2.99 a pound, or he can buy bluefin tuna for $2.49 a pound, and it's clean meat bluefin tuna, I think my dad might choose the bluefin tuna. When you can figure out a way to get the cost down and the quality of what you're serving is better, it doesn't matter whether someone cares about animal welfare. It doesn't matter whether they understand anything about a GFI conference. It doesn't matter if they believe in the science of climate change. It doesn't matter if they're a Trump voter from Birmingham. People are going to gravitate towards the thing that is better for their lives. That's how the system change really happens. And I think when those two things happen, then I think you get a move to it being the only thing on the menu.
And do you have a timeline on when you think that might happen?
I think it'll be gradual. I think in 10 to 15 years, we could live in a world where that's the case.
Okay, thanks. Lou?
I think in certain product categories, we can clearly surpass conventional agricultural or agricultural products, by category. I think to Josh's point, I think when really, it was described a little bit yesterday, and being in the food industry for over 30 years, what's always beaten in my head was the number one criterion for repeat purchase of food is taste. So I think, in life there's perception and reality. Perception will make you buy that product the first time. You are the early adopter. You're being communicated by some product attributes on the packaging or something else that you might have read or heard. And you only come back and buy it a second time if in fact the experience has been met, the quality, the taste. And taste is really critical, of course, nutrition as well. But just to build on a point, I think, agree exactly. When I think the cost can, in fact, be the premium, just as organic and other categories of food commanded a premium when they first entered the market. And obviously the price came down over time where it's not too different from premium. I think a good example is in the case of, we use canned tuna again, There's actually a 4X going on right now. People will pay a premium product for modest benefits to reduced mercury in tuna. I might pay 3X for that. Still mercury in there because everyone was tested, or at least I'm led to believe that. So there's modest benefits that are existing right now and how the product is sustainably caught. What if, in fact, you can have a mercury-free tuna? Pathogen-free, environmentally sustainable, and all these wonderful attributes. People will certainly, that product certainly seems to command a premium given that there's a 4X going on today. We're not saying we need to be at 4X, but I think we certainly can command a premium price. But again, that'll really differ by product category and how the product is positioned. But no, clearly we can surpass conventional products in a number of cases over time.
Thanks. And Nia, what do you think?
Yeah, I guess I would challenge there's this inherent assumption in your question that this product is purely a replacement of traditional meat products. And I don't think that's the case. I guess in my mind, it's almost like the next agricultural revolution. So with the first, we were able to really vary our diets. With the second, we had even more choices of what we could eat, how we could eat it. And I think with this, yes, it would be wonderful to, be in every dumpling in China. But who knows what chefs will come up with and what food scientists will come up with and what, our grandchildren will be eating. And what I'm more excited about is it's a very clean way of producing pure animal fat and protein that doesn't have the hassle of foodborne illness that we're seeing in the traditional meat industry today. And alongside all these social benefits, it has all of this functionality. There's so much more we can do with it, and that's really, really exciting to me. So I'm not sure if the answer should be only comparing it to traditional meat methods. I would also say 3/4 of what we eat today is still grown by a farmer less than 2 acres of land. That's not the most efficient way. It's not necessarily the most nutritious way, but food systems are complex and they serve a variety of needs for different people. And I wouldn't see our industry supplanting or replacing much of traditional agriculture.
Great, thank you.
I'll answer this quickly because there's been a lot of discussion. I think in popularity, we'll surpass conventional meat once we start getting it on the menus. I think if you get it on the menu in the Bay Area or in our country, once it's on the menu, I think that's the beginning of surpassing on popularity. For sales, it's important to keep in mind there's 250 billion pounds of meat that are being made every year in the current level of demand. So to be able to scale to that level, I think purely on volume, I think it's going to take a couple of decades to get there. But I think in terms of capturing a significant chunk of market share, it could happen well before that. I would then say, in the 10 to 15 year horizon.
And what year will it be on the menu?
It is on the menu now, today, if you want to come over to Memphis. I think Eric said earlier, we can eat this every day, but again, we want to get this out on the market in a very predictable way. And we're noticing something very interesting. This movement is grown out of very similar things to what all grassroots movements are born out of. Like it's coming out of fundamental respect for principles of good health, respect for local cultures, and then delicious food. And I think this industry checks off all of those boxes. And I think each of us might differentiate ourselves by the type of product we put out there because we don't need to be constrained by the framework of existing meat products. We uniquely have the ability to have the cells be the building blocks of things that are really being able to relate to what people eat, but go well past it and surpass the expectations of it. And being able to say we could personalize this for your taste, for your health, for your needs, depending on various stages in life, including for people with disease. I mean, that kind of possibilities do not exist in animal agriculture at this point. So I think that's the reason why I think the platform is going to continue to evolve into version 1 to, I guess, infinite types of products.
Thanks. And I wanted to leave it open for questions with a little bit of time left, but I'm not seeing any on the slide. Are they coming up on the screen?
Yeah, we're up there.
Oh, they're still there.
Oh, great. Okay. So the top question I'm seeing right now, beside the companies producing the meat, which related businesses are needed for the industry to scale and succeed? Do we want to start with that one? Any takers?
We kind of already answered them.
You think?
Yes, I did.
Partnerships.
Okay. Let's see. Oh, this is a good one, I think. Do you plan to make environmental benefits a part of your marketing plan? And if so, how will you quantify these benefits? Nia, let's start with you.
So I think given that we are early stage and we won't have products until at least 3 years from now, the specifics of a marketing plan aren't something which I would put up on the stage right now. But that being said, my business before this, I was running an urban farming business in Singapore, as Uma alluded to. And what was wonderful about this business is I used 70% less water, no pesticides. The footprint in terms of the land was significantly lower, and there were many studies actually validating some of these environmental benefits. When I went to the market with that message, it didn't really resonate with that set of consumers. And what did resonate was this was something that was grown near where they live. It was delicious. It was fresh tasting. And so I think to answer that question, you have to know who your consumers are. And are you going after someone who is honing in on just the environmental benefits, and that's the main reason they're not eating beef or chicken or pork, and that's why they want a clean meat product? Or are you targeting a broader base of meat eaters who really are looking at flavor, convenience, price, and how this works in a dish? And my hypothesis was more of the latter, and that's where I would like to go. So I'm not sure whether I think the environmental benefits are massive, and if this is truly a more efficient value chain, you should be able to reflect that in the cost, right? If you can really take out chunks of waste in that chain, it should come out in your product. And that's probably the most important piece of communication, like the flavor, the safety, and the price.
I think the people in our company, or the percent of the people that we attract, I think is a good representation of how many in the world can care about this. So we're about close to 40 people. And I'd say a third care really deeply about environment. And I'd expect the message that when you come out with environmental benefits, it might really resonate with a third of the world's population. I think disproportionately, maybe that message is more resonant with businesses as opposed to individuals, but it still will have the network effect that we would hope for. I think there are many reasons why the environmental efficiency of our industry is going to be much better than the conventional industry, because we're going to be simplifying the entire process of growing the meat under one roof, which means you don't have to have a separate place for artificial insemination, pregnancy, birthing, moving that through various feedlots, through a slaughterhouse, processing. We're starting out really right next to processing, and everything else is kind of short-circuited. In which case, I imagine the environmental benefits are a part of it, but the economic benefits of capturing those nodes being simplified by a magnitude or more, I think is enormous. And once it's starting to reflect on the economic benefit, I think that's when that message is going to be a lot more resonant if someone is shopping and trying to buy, comparing $2.49 of tuna versus something else.
I think they're definitely important, but of the 7.1 billion people on the planet today, the vast majority are not buying this instead of that because it's better for the environment. And that'll be the case 5 years from now and 20 years from now too. Now, to effectively sell it, I do think you need to talk about the environmental benefits because we're not selling it to everyone initially. I think there'll always be a group of people that will be attracted to it because of the environmental benefits. Again, going back to the kind of the headliner for me, how do you increase the probability that it's the only thing on the menu, not just an option on the menu? The thing that will win costs, and it's just got to taste phenomenal.
Okay, thanks.
Just to add on to the comments, in my career, I've seen a total shift in consumers that are purchasing products that were good for them, and it was very self-serving, healthy, nutritious, et cetera, to those that are good for others and good for the planet. So there's an absolute evolution, especially in the younger demographics today, and consumers that are seeking these types of products. We heard Sylvia Earle speak last night, who said the world needs live fish, as part of our ability to survive as humans. So we really address the needs kind of three ways, ocean health, ecosystem health, and community health. We just talked about the oceans, the ecosystems, and the damaged habitats. And the community is both people and fish. So there's, again, lots of messages there and benefits, both on sustainability, environmental, and personal reasons that we can convey to consumers that we think will really resonate.
I would love to ask all of the questions on the screen, but I know we're running up against time, and I'm probably going to have some angry people waiting for me back there. So I think we should close here, and I just want to give a huge thank you to all of you. This has been fascinating to me. I hope it's been equally interesting to you.